From a regulatory and legislative standpoint, can you explain the significance of FDA engaging with other recognized regulatory authorities in the MDSAP program?
Well, the nice thing is that from an FDA perspective, FDA has been working with counterpart regulatory agencies for over 25 years. I mean, I started in the agency in 1991, and even in 1991, there was very formal, what we call MRAs, mutual recognition agreements, as well as MOUs, memorandums of understanding, already established with some very key regulatory partners, such as the UK. At the time, it was MDA, Medical Devices Agency, now, you know, as well as Canada and Japan. So the FDA has had formal agreements with many different countries in medical devices and other commodities for many years. And it is very important, again, to share information, to leverage what, you know, different regulators know. From a medical device auditing perspective, in the late 1990s, there was the official US-EU Memorandum of, Mutual Recognition Agreement. Now, that mutual recognition agreement had several barriers, if you will, was not exactly very successful, but it did lay down the foundation for being able to have, you know, at least one audit being performed by an entity that would be accepted by two different regulators. Then, in addition to that, in the late 90s, FDA announced the use of third-party, you know, organizations, both to do third-party 510Ks as well as third-party inspections. That FDA third-party inspection program was built off of the US-EU MRA. Then, when we get into 2008 to 2011, there was an existing program that was a long-time partnership with Health Canada and FDA, and they did a pilot multi-purpose audit program. And that was really some of the fundamentals that we were trying to get moving at the time, in the fact that we knew that a single audit was possible. So this pilot multi-purpose audit program was developed. The goal was to have 10 manufacturers go through a single audit. However, 2 different audit reports were developed. Those audit reports were compared, contrasted, but it provided the information and the objective evidence that through one audit, both regulators could obtain the information that they needed to make their sovereign regulatory decisions. So the goal then was to take that evidence from the multi-purpose audit program, and that's how MDSAP was developed. So it's not anything that's exceptionally new that FDA works with other regulators, but this really is one of the first true programs where regulators are doing true work sharing. And that's been an exceptional cooperation and very, very good leveraging, because there's just too much work, like I mentioned earlier, for the regulators to cover the whole globe. And the MDSAP consortium is really a true work sharing. So, you know, the advantages of that are very good. Of course, the risks are the fact that there's continued coordination that's needed, and which is good, but necessary to have with the different regulators in the consortium, but also from an FDA perspective, there needs to be continued coordination within FDA to include the work that the center is doing in developing and working the program and being the lead for the MDSAP program, but very importantly working with the inspectorate through the Office of Regulatory Affairs and all the district offices and so forth. Because the FDA will use an MDSAP audit in place of an FDA audit. That's on the routine workload plan, and this is good. It does not, FDA at this time does not use an MDSAP audit to replace a PMA or pre-market approval application pre-audit. And of course, all the consortium members still hold the sovereign right to be able to come in for a for-cause audit. But, you know, but it's very good that FDA is utilizing this audit in replacement of their own. But that then requires that the necessary coordination happen between the MDSAP group that's running the program with ORA. Now, the nice thing is the inspectorate, or ORA and FDA, has been very actively involved in MDSAP from conception as well. ORA does have some of their inspectors and national experts that have helped to develop some of the educational tools. They are assessors that go out. So under the program, the regulatory authorities assess the auditing organizations, and then of course the auditing organizations audit the manufacturers. But there's quite a significant resource requirement for the regulators to do the assessments of all the different auditing organizations that are currently under the pilot, which is the only eligible auditing organizations to date are the accredited CAMCAS auditors, and so there are 14 of those. But as of January 1, 2017, it will be opened up to other third parties, to include third parties that are in existence under the Japanese system, under the Brazilian system, and other third parties in the U.S. and other places. So there is going to be a constraint that the regulators do have to have the resources to be able to do all these appropriate assessments. So that will be a bit of a risk to make sure that there is a balance between wanting to make sure that there's openness and application by other auditing organizations to do this, but at the same time there will have to be some sort of limit because the regulators do have a limitation on the resources that can go out and do all the assessments required under the program. Because the regulators have laid out a very, very rigorous program to assess the third parties, and that assessment is based off of the IMDRF MDSAP documents as well as a whole bunch of other documents, all of which can be found on the FDA webpage under the MDSAP documents. So there is some significant resource requirements by the regulatory agencies in the consortium to upkeep this very strong, consistent, predictable, transparent program.